Karen, welcome to Pink Politics. Thank you so much for coming.
It's my pleasure. It's so great to be with you.
Okay, I know you're a big deal, but I'm going to introduce you to my audience. Big deal. Big immigration attorney. Massive. You founded the Justice Action Center. And when did you find it?
Halfway through the first Trump administration. So in 2019, I had a great job. I had been at the National Immigration Law Center for 13 years. Running the legal department. And I really thought that there was a different way to do litigation. So for some reason, I thought it was a great idea to quit my job without having a job and try to start a new organization. So
that is very cool. Where did you work before?
I was at the National Immigration Law Center.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Did you get a ton of experience there, I imagine?
So much experience.
Yeah.
When I got there was this incredible man named Linton Joaquin who was there. And he was one of the very first people who started the National Immigration Law Center. But if you go back to any of these like massive cases from the 80s and 90s, cases that are still in place today, he was a part of all of those cases.
Wow.
And a very soft-spoken man who taught me a lot, and once had an immigration judge threw a shoe at him in open court. Not a shoe. The INA.
No way.
Yes. It came up once we were talking about, do you remember when like George Bush had a shoe thrown at him in a press conference?
Yeah.
And he was like, I once had to duck because a judge threw an INA at me.
That is insane. Why did he throw it at him?
I don't know. I don't remember. But I just remember like that was the lore. That was the office lore. This incredible litigator who is a very soft-spoken man once had annoyed an immigration judge so hard by probably just being relentless for his clients that she threw the INA at him.
Oh my God.
Or he. I don't even know.
I know, right? It's funny because I started doing a lot of like litigation during Trump 1.0, but I was in Portland, Oregon, where like the judges were nice.
I didn't know about the Oregon chapter.
Yeah, and you could tell they felt just so bad for my clients, and they're like, my hands are tied kind of thing, you know? And that's when I really knew. I was like, I'm like, this really depends on the president. I was like newer in immigration law. I'm like, I did family law before that. So I was just like deer in headlights. I'm like, this is pre-planned. This sucks. The judge doesn't have a lot of power here. Like I had immigration law so weird compared to other areas of law. Like it was like relearning how to be a lawyer, like in general.
For sure. And I sometimes, I would talk to Linton, but I've talked to other folks about like, what was it like practicing immigration law before the 1996 changes?
Yes.
I think that was different, right? I think going to immigration court before all of the laws that changed in 1996, I just think that immigration judges had more ability to look at the facts of the case, to look at like, do families have U.S. citizen kids? How long have they been here? And that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the great sadness of a lot of the changes in immigration law is that there isn't that much looking at the whole person or the whole family.
Right. So you've been very involved in DACA. So I want to just go into what's going on with DACA now before we go into your history.
Yeah.
All these delays I think started in October, and they're doing kind of a catch up. Why do you think there have been delays in renewals?
It's so sad. I mean, I wish I knew why there were delays in renewals, and we are seeing delays across the board, but this is unprecedented and outrageous. The latest data that I have seen is showing 6.5 months to get your DACA renewed. Now, that just doesn't work because for 10 years, USCIS has told people file 120 to 150 days before your DACA expires.
Right.
Okay, so like I always have to do the math. That's 4 to 5, is that right? 4 to 5 months?
Yeah.
4 to 5 months before. So like you don't have to be a genius to be like, if the government's saying apply 4 to 5 months before, but they're not getting renewed for 6.5 months, you're going to lose your job, you're going to accrue unlawful status, and all of these horrible things are going to happen. And that's what we're seeing all the time. I think you're seeing it all the time, too.
Yeah.
Every single day, we get contacted by DACA recipients who have done everything the government has asked of them, who have probably renewed 5 times in their life already with no problem.
Yeah.
But now everything is upended. And it's really, it's a sad situation.
Yeah, it's really sad. And there's what's worse is they haven't announced anything. They haven't explained it, no policy, nothing.
No, none of that. And worse, right? Like you and I do this all the time, right? They had the average case processing times online.
Right.
Then they took them down, right? When we started seeing the delays, they were like, oh, let's just take that off the internet. That's why we filed a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit just to get the data, right? And we still don't have responses from them yet on that and the data. And I am concerned, and I'm sure you are from the clients you work with, that the delays are only going to get worse because that's what we've been seeing, right?
Right.
If you and I were having this conversation a month ago, we would have been like, oh, it's 4.5 months delayed. And then it was 5 months delayed. And then it was 6 months delayed. Then it was 6.5. Like,
right.
But I talk to people who've been waiting 8 to 9 months for their DACA.
Right. And it's weird because the newer filings are getting approved right away. So why prioritize them and not people in the backlog?
Yeah, and it's haphazard, right? I mean, I have folks who applied in January who have been approved and some who haven't. Like, it's totally...
right.
And, look, I don't think that everything is a conspiracy theory, but what I do think is if you are not like me, right, if you're somebody who doesn't have the privilege of citizenship in this country, I think that there's so much that's being done by this administration to destabilize your life. And in a way, I think that is the point, right? I do think that the cruelty and the destabilization is the point. You don't know.
Yeah.
Are you going to get targeted for immigration enforcement? You don't know. Will your application, the way you filed it for the last decade, go through? And that, I think, is part of what they're trying to promote. And they say it, right? They say, we want people to leave.
Right. They're trying to get people to leave. So they're trying, and now with the delays, people who didn't have unlawful presence might have it now, right?
Yes, and that makes me really sad. I know it does.
Right.
You did a great job reporting on the really intense BIA decision about a week ago and trying to explain to people what that matters. But I would back up for a second and be like, what is unlawful presence anyway?
Right.
It didn't even exist, right? This is something created in the law at the time when Congress decided to really restrict immigration law. And they started doing this thing, which is counting. How long have you been in the United States without having legal papers?
Right.
And then applying negative consequences to it, right? It's always been the case that people for a million reasons come to the United States, some with status, some without status.
Right.
And it's always been the case that that you're not locked into one status for all time. You can have status and fall out of status, and you can have no status and become a citizen later.
Yeah, MAGA doesn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, that's the way it's supposed to be because life, right? Because life, because wars, civil strife, family, things happen. And because, in theory at least, the United States immigration system is supposed to promote certain things, family unity, business interests, and humanitarian purposes, right?
Right.
But this unlawful presence notion said, well, you know what? There's some people we want here. There's some people we don't. And if you have been here for a certain amount of time without status, we're going to start basically locking you out. We're going to say, well, even if you marry a U.S. citizen and you qualify for a green card, we're going to tell you have to go out of the country for a certain number of years, maybe 3, maybe 10, before you can come back in. And that, I guess somebody thought that was a good idea. But what it really leads to is broken families, family separation, and a lot of heartache.
Right.
And DACA recipients, so just to get back to your actual question, DACA recipients, many of them didn't have this thing called unlawful presence. It depends, right? If you were a young DACA recipient, if you happened to be in high school when DACA was announced, and you got DACA for the first time when you were still in high school or when you graduated, you probably didn't turn 18, right? So you don't get unlawful status when you're a minor. And so those folks, they've never had this negative clock ticking on them. But if the U.S. government is failing them and not adjudicating their DACA, then they're going to have problems later getting a green card.
Right.
And so I'm mad because people are losing their jobs. I'm mad because we tell them don't apply until 4 months before expiration. But I'm also mad because it isn't just the pain they're feeling today. They may be locked out of security and safety and a green card later. Right.
Let's talk about the FOIA lawsuit. What exactly are you requesting in your FOIA lawsuit for DACA recipients?
I mean, it is so basic. We're just how many DACA applications are you approving on time? How many are you not approving on time? When did it change? Just the basics. And the reason for that is we want to know what to advise people. We were having, when I was on my way over here, the Teams chat was blowing up and people were like, what should we be telling DACA clients about how early to renew? And no one wants to say file 6 months early, right? The reason is you kind of lose your status, right? If you file early, they don't give you your DACA running from your past DACA's end. Whatever date they issue it, that's your new 2-year interval.
Right.
And we just need information to advise people properly. Like, people want to do the right thing. If it's going to take the government 8 months to process, then DACA recipients need to know it so they can file 9 months early.
Right. Okay. I think that's a great idea because a lot of people were scared. They thought it was the lawsuit and the class action, and it wasn't. It's a FOIA lawsuit's very normal. It's the next step when you don't get your information from a FOIA, right?
Totally. And look, I get it. The reason why everybody's scared is because we're all trying to figure out, like, everyone is just trying to survive, right? Yeah. DACA recipients just want to keep their status, keep their work authorization, and make it through this administration, which started deporting DACA recipients. Like, what is that?
I know. I don't think they ever expected it. I mean, it was certainly, I have to explain, like, listen, it's an argument against it, but it doesn't mean you can't get deported, especially if it's expired, which the Trump administration is taken care of right now by these delays, these delayed renewals. It's awful.
Right. And, look, I think it isn't just a delay, right? Like, I think this is delegalization, right? I think that DACA has been around since 2012. So renewal started in 2014. And they've never taken anywhere in this realm. Like, if you look at all the average case processing times, 2 months at most.
Right.
So the government has always been competent, even during the first Trump administration, to handle people's renewals. And so a failure to handle renewals at scale like this, you have to assign some intent. And it's not like we aren't making it public. DACA recipients themselves are all over social media making very clear what's happening to them. So I know we kind of use these words like delayed adjudication and that kind of thing. I think it kind of sanitizes what's happening. Yeah. I think this is a delegalization effort done quietly, kind of one case by one case, one person by one person, instead of a mass pronouncement, so that it's harder to challenge, so that it's harder for there to be pushback.
Right, because it's just one person, like, who's going to sue? But if it's everyone, well, that leads to the next question. When should we do a massive class action lawsuit?
So this is like a risk calculus, and I think it's important for us to all just talk about honestly, right? So I was really lucky to be part of a huge group of lawyers and DACA recipients who challenged the Trump administration's first effort to end DACA. So First time around, they held a press conference. Attorney General Sessions came out and was like, I'm ending DACA, right? They did their delegalization publicly.
Yeah, that was wild.
And it was wild. And we filed a lawsuit within 2 hours of that press conference. And it went to the U.S. Supreme Court. It was joined with a bunch of other lawsuits. And it was actually a beautiful day. And the Supreme Court said, no, you can't end DACA this way. Yes, a new president can end the program, but you did it the wrong way. You didn't take into account how hurt families would be, DACA recipients would be, employers would be. DACA remains in place. Okay, well, that didn't answer the question, is DACA legal, yes or no, in the eyes of the United States Supreme Court. And then after that win, which was in 2020, the state of Texas has had this long-standing lawsuit in the state of Texas. This is my home state, so nothing negative about, I'm not talking about the people of Texas. I am a person
the government
of Texas, but the government of Texas, big thumbs down in my opinion.
I completely agree with you.
And they challenged and said, we think DACA is illegal. We think it hurts us, which is a whole crock. And ultimately, they win in district court and they get a ruling from Judge Hanen saying DACA is unlawful. It goes up to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. It goes up and down. But the most recent ruling from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is shockingly good for DACA. Yeah. Shockingly good. It says, you know what? First of all these states that challenge the program, only Texas has established standing. Okay? And I'll circle back to what the heck that means in a second. But they say the deferred action part, the don't deport anyone, that's lawful. The president clearly has the power to do so. The Fifth Circuit recognizes this, I think because they had to, because that really has been Supreme Court law for a long time. But then the whole battle becomes, well, what about work authorization? Is it legal for a president, not Congress, to give certain groups of immigrants work authorization? And the Fifth Circuit says, not for the state of Texas only. But that ruling has not been implemented.
Yeah.
But what it also means is if someone, me, you, someone else, moves a big lawsuit that allows the question of is DACA legal, yes or no, to start moving, this administration can say, well, we didn't end the program. We didn't do it, but we had to defend because we do think it's unlawful. And these people were kind of calling the question. And look, it's my job to look at the risk at the U.S. Supreme Court and say, is this a Supreme Court where I think we can get 5 votes, right, to win on that question? And I am not sure. I mean, I think we should, because I believe, and I could give you like a very long chat about why DACA is legal.
Yeah.
But I don't know if these justices, if there are 5 of them right now, who would say so. I think it's a close call. And so that's the calculus that everyone is weighing. Are we better off, and are there ways for us to get legal relief for all the DACA recipients who are losing their jobs and being hurt right now without presenting a vehicle that could give us a negative answer on the legality of DACA? And I want to be really clear. I believe DACA is legal. I will defend it until the last breath of my body. But I want to win it. And the reason I want to win it is not just for my clients and loved ones who have DACA. It's because I would like to see a future president do something bigger than DACA.
Right.
It's because I want to see more safety for more families. And so that's why I take this question so seriously. And I know so many people like you and all of us do.
Yeah, it's huge. What, and with your work, what can you tell to DACA recipients whose not just delayed, the renewals are expired? What can they do?
So I think they should do a lot of things, and you should tell me what you're telling folks to do too. So we always tell people, like, immediately get your expedite request in.
Right.
Like, ask it's easier for us in the state of California. Both of our senators are willing to do expedite requests for any DACA recipient in the state. Their offices are great. They are locked in, and they will put those requests in from your senator. So folks in other places have a harder time, but absolutely make the ask, right? You will be shocked that folks on both sides of the aisle are willing to put these requests in, and file your own expedite request, which you can do in your My USCIS account. So those are like minimum things. You have to do it. Make the inquiry with Ask Emma. Like, do all of those things because it's helpful to document that you have tried to raise the attention of your case.
For the lawsuit, right?
Yes, for the lawsuit. I mean, because we have to have a legal tool.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If people are being hurt, there has to be a legal tool that can help. And it wouldn't be my wildest dream to say that we should be filing individual writs of mandamus, which one of my former DACA recipient clients was like, wait, what? What are you saying? Writ of Matt Damon? Like, what is that?
I think I say it wrong half the time, too. I'm like, I don't know. Just say it however you want. It's a lawsuit.
It's a lawsuit. It's a lawsuit. It's some Latin. And I think it basically means forcing government action.
Yeah.
And it so this is what we're recommending to people. And I would never sit around and dream up such a high intensity, labor-intensive legal solution, which requires one after another individual DACA recipients to file lawsuits if we weren't worried about this overall legal question for DACA.
Correct.
But that's what we have been recommending. What we've been doing is, honestly, we reach out to the opposing counsel first, right? And we say, hey, here's a copy of our writ of Matt Damon, right? Our writ of mandamus for this DACA recipient. We have it all filled out. And we say, we are going to file this in X days, in 5 days, in 7 days, in 4 days, whatever it is.
Right.
But we'd really love to avoid litigation and let us know if this can be resolved outside of court. And we have had a good amount of success with that, meaning all of a sudden work authorization and DACA gets issued before we have to file the lawsuit.
And that saves so much time and money.
All the things. And hassle. I don't think that local AUSAs want to go into court on a temporary restraining order about why this DACA application has not been renewed for the 6th time in somebody's life.
I don't even know if they
6
can.
months.
Like, do they even have the numbers to do that right now?
Yes, I think that's a problem too.
Right?
And so I wouldn't, and I don't want to have to file a lawsuit. Lawsuits cost money. You have to pay a filing fee at a minimum. They take time, all of that. But I'll do the homework. I'll write it up and show, we're very serious here. Like this, and you write it up and you say, here are all the ways that this person is being harmed because their adjudication is just sitting there. So that's what we've been doing. And look, DACA recipients, I mean, I know you've been seeing this too. They're doing it themselves. People are going into court pro se.
Yeah.
They're like teaching each other how to do this. And again, it balances that risk. What I don't love is this is not the way the law is supposed to work.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to do this. Yeah.
You shouldn't have to do this, right? The law should not work that whoever knows me or whoever knows you can find their way into our offices and we will do this up for them.
Right.
But and this is what like makes me nervous at night. What about folks who aren't listening to this podcast? What about folks who don't know an attorney or a legal services office near them that is going to write up a mandamus for them?
Right. I can't tell you how many consults who randomly find me on Google and then they're like, so when should I renew my DACA? I'm like, where have you been? And I'm like, are you on the internet? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh, right. Some people are not on the internet, I guess.
Yeah.
and they don't know, And then I'm like, I need to catch you up. We need to file now.
Yeah.
And then I panic because I assume every DACA recipient knows about the delays. But some people don't, right?
Yeah, some people are just trying to live their lives.
Yeah, like a normal person.
Like a normal person. Or, I think about it like the one that we wrote up last night. This DACA recipient didn't get DACA until 2017, but this is her 5th renewal. So why would you panic if 5 times for 10 years it's been like clockwork? You turn it in at 120 days and it comes out the other end in 80 days. You would be like, I don't need to go crazy.
Yeah, they don't expect you to all of a sudden stop with absolutely no reason or announcement. And yeah, I get it. And I've had dealt with that with some of my clients. I'm like, so we automatically we're renewing a year ahead now. Yeah. I'm like
a year ahead.
Yeah,
wow.
I'm like, I'm crazy. I don't care. I'm like, I'm so paranoid. I'm like, let's just do it. Let's see what they do.
Yeah, and it's so funny. Yeah, there used to be I think this rule is still in place. There is a rule, and we did a FOIA years ago to find this out. USCIS had a rule that said, we won't adjudicate your DACA until you're less than 150 days from expiration. So I think that, and it's fine, I agree with you, people should be filing early. I've been telling people 6 months early. File 6 months early because they're just not processing them fast enough.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to get held until day 149 and then they'll go into the queue for renewals.
Right? That is insane.
It's insane.
It's like, and speaking of Judge Hanen, why do you think he hasn't released his decision? I mean, we know how he feels about DACA. He already ruled on it.
You know, it's funny. I think it's interesting to me because judges really are people too, right?
I forget.
and I, if you look at everything, and I have read every one of those transcripts in detail, poured over every single word and all of his opinions on this case. In fact, when he first got the DACA case, I looked up every single immigration case he had ever had and read them because I was like, what's he gonna do?
Right.
And I could not disagree with him more about his take on the legality of DACA or the executive authority over immigration. That's the legal side. But if you listen to him, he seems like he's kind of a nice man to humans. If you look at the transcripts and you look at what he says from time to time about the people of DACA, not the program of DACA, I think maybe he's a little conflicted. I think maybe he understands that these are young adults, and they're not even young adults anymore, 40-year-olds, 30-year-olds,
millennials,
with families, children, and it doesn't sit right with him. I don't know. I don't know him. But if you look you'll see a sprinkling in what he says in court and what's in his opinions, where he clearly recognizes in some ways the humanity of the people before him. Just what you want in a judge.
Right. And he can wait as long as he wants, right, to release his decision. What do you think? How long do you think he's going to wait?
I have no idea. I mean, one of these days, I think in talking about it, we're going to jinx it, and then I'm going to be on the 5 driving home, and somebody's going to be like, Judge Hanen just released his decision. I mean, that happened, right?
Yeah.
It was the last business day of the of the Biden administration. It was like a Friday, and I had a loved one who was consular processing in Monterrey, Mexico, and I was driving somewhere and And it was all very stressful because people were trying to get all their processing done because we didn't know what was going to come on day one of this administration. And that's when the Fifth Circuit released their ruling.
Isn't that insane? The timing is diabolical, like always, right?
Always.
That's so funny. Okay, yeah, and I did want to, I think that's the problem is that I think like lawyers like you and I get asked like, why do you think? I'm like, I don't have any knowledge on this administration and why they do the things they do other than they're evil. That's just my opinion. I'm like, I don't get it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this administration has told us, right? They told us, like, and you say this too. When I was listening to your coverage of the BI decision last week, you were like, listen, everyone, this was in Project 2025.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And we had like a legal department meeting at Justice Action Center, and then we had a staff meeting. And, we have done a lot of advanced parole work for DACA recipients. And so that decision was really hard and sad for us too, for our clients. And I kind of said to everyone, I said, I know, like, I'm kind of in my feels because I felt a little blindsided. I don't know why I felt blindsided. They told us they were going to do this.
Same. I forget sometimes.
And maybe it's because there's so much bad happening all the time that we can't process it or take it in. But I would say I don't know what this administration is going to do next and when they're going to do it. But they made it very clear that cruelty was the point.
Yeah.
They made it very clear that they wanted a whiter America.
Right.
And that they were going to use immigrants as scapegoats to rally their base.
Right.
So that's what I think they're going to keep doing.
That's interesting. I wanted to ask you about, because I feel like you are in particular probably getting a lot of deja vu from just in your experience, like when it comes to SB 1070.
Oh, my Lord.
Are you feeling deja vu when you litigated that case, right?
Yeah.
What was your experience in that case?
It's funny. That case was so intense, and in some ways, I was actually thinking about that on the drive over. We had this period in 2010 through kind of 2012 where it was like one state after another that was passing these anti-immigrant laws. In the Arizona SB 1070 case, one of the experiences that I had that I thought was so wonderful was really just the plaintiffs in Arizona and the pushback and the kind of change that it promoted within the state itself. And people were like, oh no, you've gone too far. State officials in passing this law. I don't want to have to worry about carrying my papers with me everywhere I go or making copies of my passport. Or you pulling me over because I'm, Asian American or Latino.
Right, because it was the show me your paper. For those of you who don't know, it was the show me your papers law, meaning
Absolutely.
Like if you get stopped by a cop, you have to show them papers if they think you're undocumented.
If they think you're undocumented.
Yeah, so racial profiling, right, okay.
It was 100% racial profiling.
Yeah.
And look, and we don't talk about this enough. And to be clear, the only part that we lost when we went to the U.S. Supreme Court was that part. So there were a million parts of this law.
Right.
There was also, they called it harboring and transporting, right? So there were provisions that would criminalize behavior of people, even attorneys, who are knowingly helping undocumented people, right? Or if you were driving an undocumented person somewhere, or if they're staying in your house, if you know. And again, like there's so many reasons why that is problematic, including we have federal laws for that.
Yeah.
And it's a very high bar what you have to be doing to facilitate someone's like stay in the country. It is not just like living with your undocumented family member. So we won on all of those pieces of the law. We won on, there was this like weird registration scheme where the state wanted to like track everyone who was a non-citizen. God. We won on those, very MacArthur era stuff. But the first question in the U.S. Supreme Court when the case was heard at oral argument was the Chief Justice looked at Don Verrilli and the solicitor, and he said, I just want to ask you, General, this case isn't about racial profiling, right? And we were all like,
well, yeah.
And, Don Verrilli, who I absolutely adore, who is a legal giant and also a terrific mentor for women and lots of folks in the law, he said, that's right. This isn't about racial profiling. And that night, a couple of my friends and I were at like debriefing at dinner who were also co-counsel in the case. And we were gutted by that answer. he was technically correct. Our equal protection claim had not been taken up.
Yeah.
It was not before the court. So he was giving that answer. You don't have that before you, Chief Justice. But everything about the case was about racial profiling.
Well, how do you avoid it? How do you avoid it? It's interesting that he would ask that. Obviously, this justice knows that it's not about, because it wasn't an issue presented in front of him, but he just had to.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. He was trying to do that thing that, no offense, I love white men in many ways, but, that white men love to do, which is, I'm colorblind.
Yes.
This case is colorblind, is what he was doing.
Oh, yeah.
And everything about the case was about race and racism. And I think for me, that's a huge problem in the law. We like to pretend that it's colorblind, and it isn't. We like to pretend, and this, it's only because I'm old now. It's only because I'm 52 years old, and I have no problem saying it directly. Like, the U.S. law was meant to maintain white supremacy, right?
Bingo.
And until we undo it, redo it as a place where everyone believes when you walk into a courtroom that those judges want to uphold your rights, that those judges want you to have the same equality that I have. Until we get there, we're always going to be undoing kind of the vestiges of a tool that was meant to keep power for some and exclusion for others.
Right.
And so when those things happen, I'm like very fixated on it, because it's this attempt to act like race isn't operating at a minimum right below the surface.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's interesting. Yeah, and now I think there's law in Texas is the exact same way.
Yes.
The Show Me Your Papers law in Texas. And I remember when it was first a thing, I think it was years ago, I was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
Like, this won't hold up. I was like, this is crazy. But now it's not. Now I think I'm just like immune to all of it. I'm like, I expect it almost. You know? But then there's like the BIA decision. I'm like, every single DACA recipient who sues now, if it goes to this BIA, like you could affect everyone with DACA, you know? And then when everyone asks, like, why don't we do a lawsuit? That's a great example. Like, the BIA is just like stacked against us,
against us right now.
Yeah.
And look, I think it's important, the BIA, yes, BIA is appointed, right? And it doesn't go through the usual process. There's no Senate confirmation. There's no even attempt to have the kind of checks that we have on regular Article III judges.
Right.
So I agree with you. It's been stacked by this president in a very serious way. That said, I think that the work of good lawyers is to figure out how to win, even from appointees I don't care what president appointed the judge, I'm going to get up there in court and try to do my best to win the case, right?
That's right.
And, we had a win a few years back on the CHNB parole program in front of Judge Tipton in Texas, who's a Trump appointee. And people were like, oh, man, I don't know what you're doing. Going to do a lot. We went to trial in August in Texas and ended up getting a win in that case. And I think it's just because we were able to work really hard and just kind of relentlessly present to him facts that he could not look away from. Right.
Good for you. Like that I think it's more fun to win in front of a judge that's appointed by Trump, like I imagine.
Yeah.
Right? That's so funny. So SB 1070, I remember I was looking at that this morning. I was like, oh my God, I remember it, but now I'm like, it was so shocking back then.
So shocking.
We couldn't believe it. Like, how could you? We've progressed as a country, but we haven't. We've learned now that not a lot of people progressed in this country. No. All the people who voted for Trump did not progress. They wanted to regress.
And look, I wasn't in California when Prop 187 passed, right?
Right.
But I know that it was like a real awakening, and it really changed kind of what we saw for some of our state elected leaders after that. And I do think that SB 1070 in Arizona led to that state becoming much more purple, and led to, there were formation of incredible nonprofits and organizations. One of, our plaintiffs in that case then became a city council member, like all of these good things kind of happened from that. And, I wonder if if the same maybe, I hope, is happening in my home state of Texas too. There are some really good candidates leading. You know, my mom all the time is like, I don't know, is this finally the time where Texas becomes more liberal? And it might be.
I know. So I lived in Texas my husband's actually from Texas, like grew up there, but I lived in Texas for a few years. And I was so ignorant coming from California because I knew it was red, but I didn't know how red. Right. And then I lived in Dallas and I thought Dallas is a blue city, but it's so segregated that when we were there during the election, the amount of MAGA flags everywhere, I had no idea how racist people are until I moved to Texas. I had no idea. There's so many good people, but it is so heavily MAGA there still. Right. Okay. And it's not just the Bible Belt. It's like outside of the big cities, it is red.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's complicated, right? I'm just a girl from Texas. Also, I'm from Houston, born and raised there my whole life until I went to college. You know, my mom still lives there.
Yeah.
My father, until he passed away, lots of family there. And, you know, and I love Texas. When the plane starts to descend in Houston, I get all like weepy.
It's home, right?
It's home. And I also think, you know, it's something I'm working on. Like, I have to do a better job of trying to figure out how to talk to people about various immigration issues, right? And getting out of some of like, there's just like misinformation, lies, all kind of things that are spread. Like, for example, there is no line for most people to get into. So when someone tells me, well, they should just get in line, I'm
like the DMV.
Like there is no line. Like people will wait in line. If there was a line that you could get into that is like, I love this country. I want to come forward and pay whatever I need to pay and do things the right way. People would be standing outside in the cold, in the heat to get in line. Yeah. There is no line.
Don't you think they would if they could?
Yeah.
I'm like, do you think anyone wants to be undocumented? I genuinely get comments. One time I did a TikTok and I was like, MAGA, how do you think people should become legal? Like, how would you fix this situation? Yeah. And they're like, I don't know, follow the laws or get in line. Or like one said, when you get to the border, apply for a green card and then wait.
Yeah.
I think they think you can get it in like a day.
Exactly. So there's like all of that because what I experience is like, look, yes, like there are people, like we have a president who has said things that is basically like, I want white immigrants and not others. Okay.
Right.
I have very clear feelings. To me, that is racist. Like, I'm not okay with that. That is not the country that I want to live in. But a lot of people are just like spitting out half information or don't understand like the full information. And most folks, if you can talk to them and be like, if your children were at risk of death from the situation in your home country, or you were, would you leave or would you stay? I have not met a parent anywhere who would be like, I would just stay, right? Like those, they don't exist. There is no parent who has a beating heart who wouldn't do everything to get their kids and themselves to safety.
But then they would have to have empathy with brown people. And a lot of people don't who voted for him, you know?
Yeah.
They don't want to. I remember I posted how anyone born in the United States is privileged because of that. You're privileged to be born here because you didn't have to earn it. You didn't have to make that decision to choose between life or death, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a privilege, and you know, we think it all the time, right? There's different parts of the, you know, like what's happening to folks in different parts of the world. You know, it's a privilege to have safety.
Right.
It's a privilege to go to bed at night and to know that my son is safe. Like that is a privilege, and so many people don't have it. So I don't know. And this is where, like, am I horrified by what this administration is doing? Yes. Will I and my team like do everything that we can to like fight for our clients and to push back on what they're doing? Absolutely, yes. And I want to think more about how to like where are the places where we can all understand the common humanity,
right?
Because we share more than we think, right? Even regardless of who votes for who. Everybody wants their kids to be safe. Everybody wants a brighter future for them. And frankly, everybody's afraid, right? Because things don't look great for a lot of upward mobility for anyone.
Right. And that's why we need reform. But you're right. I think it's education, because even a lot of people on the left, before I was an immigration attorney, I had absolutely no education on immigration.
Yeah.
And I wasn't an immigrant, so why would I, right? And a lot of people, they think they understand how it works. They think it's like any other law, but it's immigration law is so weird and bizarre, and it's needed change for so long. And this concept of just build a wall or just kick them out will prevent illegal immigration. It will not.
No.
And they're not willing to accept that. So you're right. And I'm trying to do a better job of that as well, which is a big reason why I did this podcast, is to actually reach out to MAGA and like educate them, which is like Talarico does a great job at that, right? Like he's intelligent. He uses their priorities like religion and God and the Bible, and he uses it to explain like how people should be protected, and even with immigration. I think he talked about immigration too once at a church, and I was like, oh, I need to do that. Like, it's a good idea. I wanted to bring up, I'm sure you get asked this all the time, the Muslim ban.
Oh, the Muslim ban. Oh my gosh.
And what was your involvement in the Muslim ban, and what was the argument in that case? What was the main issue?
Oh, wow. The Muslim ban. Yes, Trump 1.0. So one of the first things that President Trump did was a Muslim ban, of banning entry of folks from certain majority Muslim countries. And I have a really great friend, Becca Heller, who at the time she had founded and was running IRAP, the International Refugee Assistance Project. And she could kind of see this coming because like a week before President Trump was sworn in, she called me and she was like, listen, we have clients who are coming every day, like from Iraq, on flights. What if one of my clients is in the air? They've taken off from Baghdad and they're on their way to LAX or JFK, and Trump signs an executive order banning their entry. Do their rights dissolve midair? And I remember like where I was standing talking to her, and I was like, yes. And she was like, so what are we going to do about that? And so she started, it was her idea, obviously, but I sent lawyers as well. When people were landing at LAX, we started accompanying people so that we would have a lawyer on the ground when these flights were coming in. And that's how we found out about the Muslim ban happening on a Friday night. It was a Friday night. I thought I was going home to have like popcorn and wine and watch like Disney with my children. And I got a call from her, and she said, well, first of all, we knew the executive order had been signed. And Becca called and said, I've got folks landing at JFK in a few hours. If they don't get through, then this is already operational. And so we were trying to figure out, is it operational or not? And Mr. Darwish, who was our first client, sure enough, he lands at JFK. They don't let him out. They detain him, and they book him on a return flight to Baghdad. And we know that the Muslim ban is starting. We've already, by this point, started writing the lawsuit overnight. And I filed that lawsuit from my dining room table at something like 4 a.m. because they were minutes away from putting him back on a flight. And it was, whatever it was, Saturday morning at 4 a.m. And then we had the emergency temporary restraining order hearing the next day in Brooklyn on a Saturday. They opened the courthouse on a Saturday to go to that. And so that was kind of my experience of the lawsuit, which is to say, advanced planning and that kind of brilliance that came from Becca of, wait a minute, how is this really going to impact my individual clients? And could somebody be flying and lose their rights to enter this country midair? And what can we do about it? Is why we were able to so quickly file that lawsuit and push back against it.
That is quick thinking. Because you're right, and that's happening to people now.
Yeah.
Like the travel ban. I mean, the travel bans that we have now.
Yeah, they're all modeled on this.
Yeah.
And the Muslim ban is another interesting story. And this is why, this is a lot of the reason why I decided to start Justice Action Center. I always say we were winning so terrifically in the Muslim ban cases right up until we lost so prolifically at the Supreme Court. So we won that case over and over again. And every time we would win it in district court and at the circuit court, President Trump would rescind the Muslim ban and write a new one. And then we would go back to court and we would win again 3 times. And on the 3rd time that he wrote the Muslim ban, the Supreme Court decided that he had written it correctly, and that was what was allowed to stand. But the problem is, On Muslim ban number 1, what we were just talking about, people were going to the airports. People were pissed, right?
Yeah.
All over the country, hundreds and hundreds of people showed up at airports with signs saying immigrants are welcome here and all the things, not my America. That's what people were mad. By the time we got to the Supreme Court, people were not paying attention anymore. They thought we had it handled. We had won, right?
Right.
And then we lost. And the legal precedent has allowed these country bans to be in place, these travel bans, including against countries that we're supposed to be helping or allied with, like Venezuela.
Right?
What is happening here?
Right. I thought President Trump was good with Venezuela. Like, whoa, I don't understand. When I saw that, I was like, there's no way. I actually was shocked by that.
Yeah. And it should be undone. Right? Given what our intervention has been. But that's the issue, which is legal victories are amazing. They are fantastic. But the most enduring and important legal victories, all the ones that any average American can rattle off, are ones where the court caught up to public opinion, right?
Right.
Brown versus Board of Education, same-sex marriage, you name it. The court ultimately catches up to what people want and what our notions of equality and fairness are. And if we cannot figure out how there was this very quick outpouring of love and pushback at the airports for the original Muslim ban, but by the time we lost at the Supreme Court and families were being divided, because that is the result. The result of a long-term ban on Iranians, for example, is divided families.
Right.
People stop caring. And so that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in how do we build cases in a way that allows people to emotionally engage with them and to register before the court. I care about this. These values matter to me.
Right. I would think that people would care more with how online everyone is, but maybe it's just caused further divide, in my opinion. Like, it's too online with all these creators. I don't know. I mean, that's what Trump wanted. He wanted to divide us. And I was talking to my husband about this earlier. I'm like, people, even on the left, are too divided. We're to the point where we're not agreeing to disagree, and we're forgetting the overall goal of agreeing and compromising so that we can have reform.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're talking about public opinion, do you think that's kind of what happened with the Birthright citizenship case?
Yeah, I do. I mean, look, birthright citizenship is so intense. So first of all, shout out to Cecilia Wong, who argued the case, an incredible woman and litigator, and to the entire massive team. That is not just one case. It's tons of cases, tons of organizations who defended birthright citizenship. Though, of course, I love seeing Cecilia as someone who is the daughter of 2 immigrants.
So cool.
Standing up and arguing so beautifully. But Trump was always going to lose.
Yeah.
I mean, he lost coast to coast in every courtroom on that. It was never about was he going to win or lose that case. It was about injecting the idea that maybe some kids, some babies don't deserve to be citizens and some do. Because if you plant the seed, then maybe you can further develop it. And so that's all about public opinion, you know. So his victory wasn't if any judge agreed with him. No judge did. There were so many cases brought against it, and he lost in every courtroom.
Right.
And yet still he becomes the first president in U.S. history to go live into a Supreme Court argument because it was theater. It was the theater of him saying, I think some children belong and some don't. And that to me is dangerous, right? To me, it is so dangerous if we start drawing that line that some children belong and some don't. Legally speaking, I mean, you can't make it any clearer. The 14th Amendment literally says all persons born here are citizens thereof. There is no language to make that more clear.
Dumbest argument ever against it. Like, it's just such a waste of time. And I remember I was interviewing some of the lawyers, and they're like, it's annoying that I'm here. He's like, of course it's important, but it's annoying that we have to be here for this. Like, anything that we can litigate because it's so obvious.
Yeah, it's annoying. And I will say the impacts of that case were happening even though the executive order was thrown out basically immediately and lost in every court. You know, I had a loved one who here in Los Angeles, she is a U.S. citizen. Her 2 sons are U.S. citizens. And she went to get their passports so that they could visit their grandparents in Mexico. And she got dinged for both of them because, I mean, you know that, like, if your child is born in California, the way the California birth certificates read, they list the parents' names and they list the country of birth for the parents. And her husband was born in Mexico. And because of that, both of her sons were rejected for their passports, despite presenting U.S. birth certificates.
No way.
And she was like, "Hi, Karen, I have a question." She texted me. She was like, "Hey, mommy, I went to get passport for the boys because we want to go to the rancho for Christmas." And I was like, "Excuse me, what?" And so I was like, "Okay." And I wrote a letter for her to appeal it. And then I contacted the ACLU lawyers. I contacted one of my friends on the case and I was like, "Are you seeing this? Like, I think this is the executive order in effect." Even though I know the executive order is not in effect, he's like, "Yeah, no, we're seeing this. Your letter is good. Let me know if it doesn't work." Of course, the letter worked and she got the passports and they went on the trip. But again, this is the stuff, like, twofold. That's the point. The message was still sent. You don't belong. Your kids don't belong. Your birth certificate is not as good as my birth certificate. You have to jump through extra hoops.
So the passport office was denying passports to U.S.-born citizens, even though the executive order was not in effect.
Yes.
Like, completely ignoring the law.
Yes.
Unreal.
Extra scrutiny, right?
Yeah.
It was like, was it an all-time denial? It was like, we're not issuing it. And they asked for more proof.
Oh, of
right?
course.
They asked for more proof, but, like, it's a birth certificate.
What other proof do you need? I mean, I've seen that with the midwife cases, but like not with this. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Have you heard of those midwife cases being from Texas?
Of course.
Isn't that wild?
It's crazy. There was another one. So this example and then a second example. Again, the birth certificate listed, like, place of birth, parking lot of hospital. Not kidding. This happens. This is a for real thing.
Yeah.
Some peeps, it's faster than others.
Yeah, like, just
so
didn't make
that's the listing. It's still a California birth certificate, and it's still got this request for extra documents. The hospital had since closed down, and this one came into me too. And I was like, okay, let's try to get extra documents from, and luckily this mom was able to get extra documentation from whatever it was 10 years ago, showing, like, she got a discharge paper, even though the hospital had been closed, even though she had a California birth certificate that said, like, birth in parking lot of hospital.
That is insane. Yeah, but you're right. It's all about, like, we don't care if it's going to become law or not.
Yeah.
We just want to send a message that we don't want you here. And that's the whole was in Project 2025. It was like, we just don't want you here. We want a wider America. And so whether we're going to get, like, all these bullshit memos.
Yeah.
I'm like, online, like, ignore them. You know, I'm like, even though I shouldn't tell you to ignore them, I'm pretty sure this is just fear mongering. Like the USCIS adjustment of status memo, what did that last, like, a week?
Yeah.
I don't even know if they even enforce that for any decisions.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing is, right, it's very hard. And this is why I love what you do, right? You spend a lot of time breaking down the law, breaking down things for people to try to understand it. Because if we don't do that, just because the president says something or a memo issues doesn't mean that somebody's rights have changed, doesn't mean that the law has changed, right?
Right.
A lot of time it's done for kind of theater or to send a message or confuse people. But how's a normal person supposed to know?
Yeah, they're not. Yeah. Why would they think otherwise? It's funny you say that because, like, I've had a lot of lawyers who, like, you know, they criticize me. They're like, "Well, you didn't include this. You didn't include this," and I'm like, I'm talking to someone who could possibly have a third grade education. Like, I am not trying to post for another lawyer. I'm like, you already know it. you know.
And look, I mean, it's a balance. This stuff is complex. When the BIA decision came down last week, I talked to an LA Times reporter who's an excellent reporter, and she was like, "How many lawyers did you talk to about this decision?" I was like, "A lot, like 10." And she was like, "Did you guys, like, convene calls to talk about it?" I was like, "Yeah, because we don't all know what it means.
So humbling.
We all have to, we have to ask each other, what do you think it means for this? What do you think it means for that?"
Same. I'm in a group chat, a Signal group chat of TikTok lawyers. I'm like, what are you posting? And I'm like, should we translate this together before we all post? So sometimes, like, I better understand it when I'm literally posting because I'm, like, saying it out loud. And I'm like, okay, now I get it more and I'm going to repost it. But Yeah, because you have to transcribe it and translate it to people who don't understand the law and can't read it or don't read it, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's hard.
And look, I have learned about legal argument or legal briefs or what have you. None of us get it right all the time, right?
Right.
Your first take on something and who's covered by a certain legal change and who isn't, we may not get it right. We may not understand all the intricacies. We may get it 9/10 right, but then go back and correct it.
Yeah.
Right. So like that's the work, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah, I have no problem. Sometimes I'm on a consult with some of these new changes, and I was like, I'll call you back. I'm like, I got to understand this myself, and it'll be like the memo. I remember I was in a consult right after I was released, and the consult was an hour. And they're like, Is this going to happen to me? I'm like, I honestly don't know. I'm like, let me call you on Monday.
I need to take a beat.
It was so complex. I want to talk about Justice Action Center. What services do y'all provide? And can you explain the Justice Action Center for those who don't know about it?
Yeah, of course. So the Justice Action Center, we're a nonprofit. We're based in California, although we have remote workers in lots of different places. And the idea is basically we do impact litigation combined with storytelling. And you might say, what is that? So basically, we're looking to bring large-scale cases most of the time. And sometimes those are class actions, right? Like your typical, like one of our cases, for example, is brought on behalf of 1 million parolees, right, of different kinds. Folks from Uniting for Ukraine or the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, Venezuelan program. That's like one big case. It's a traditional class action where Trump has tried to delegalize those folks, and we have stood in the courthouse doors trying to keep their legal status in place. But sometimes it can be individual cases where we're trying to shine a light on things, right? These individual mandamus actions for DACA recipients.
Right.
Where we're trying to bring a coordinated effort across the country to make sure that no DACA recipient is losing their status because of government ineptitude and delay. And then the storytelling piece is what we were talking about before. I guess it's because I was raised with so much of my parents' love. You know, I believe actually that almost every person in this country, if they really stopped and thought about immigration as something that tears families apart, would support humane immigration reform. And I just think that we have to do a better job telling the stories of our broken immigration system, telling the stories of how families are hurt, and that will ultimately lead us to the changes that we need. Like, ultimately, my long-term vision is I would like to see a constitutional right to family unity. That, I say that, and it should be a thing, right? People say, oh, that's not going to happen. You know, that's like a 40-year legal project. And I say, well, we've seen a lot of people engage in a 40-year legal project to overturn Roe versus Wade, for example. Why can't we engage in this 40-year legal project? But there is a right to family unity, right? It operates in the child welfare context and things like that. Why shouldn't it operate that any U.S. citizen should not have a parent taken away from them?
I agree. I completely agree. Do you think there's hope for reform in the next administration?
Yes, of course.
Me too. I have a lot of hope for then.
I think we're planting the seeds with what we're doing right now. I think that every client that we all work together to help and to keep their family intact and keep them doing well in this country during this administration, we are planting the seeds and the demand for change and more protection in the next administration.
I completely agree. Well, thank you so much for coming all the way from LA down here.
Thank you so much for everything that you do.
Awesome. And where can people find the Justice Action Center?
We're real basic. You can find us at justiceactioncenter.org. We're on all the socials.
Perfect.
Check us out.
Awesome.